everyone, welcome to the recording studios in the William Guild building. I want to give you some feedback on the ethical review assignment. I've called it actually Feed Forward because it's meant to help you do better in the future. So I hope you see it in that spirit. Sadly, in this case there were some with good marks, but also quite a lot of C's and D's, which is a real pity because I know a bit about you and I know that all of you are capable of getting an A on this kind of assignment. So I've tried to identify what the reason was, so looking at all of your assignments, and the most common place where marks were missed was if you didn't answer the assignment question. Very often people just went straight to the 10 questions without actually looking what does the assignment want from me. So there was this thing at the top, so below are 10 questions taken from the School of Psychology Ethical Review form, and then for each question indicate whether the relevant study is compliant with research ethics or not. Very often that was missed out. And the same at the bottom here, you should consider how the study could be changed to improve it. Very often that was missed out as well. So people might say, I think it was the third or fourth question, they observed people without their permission. No participants were not debriefed. No participants did not sign a consent form. It's quite possible that people under 16 were on the train. But there they stopped. So the question to answer is this ethical? That's really what it's about. Now, is it ethical not to debrief people? Is it ethical to observe people without their permission? Maybe in some cases it is, or in other cases it is not. Now, what are the ethical problems with people under 16 who are on the train and actually taking part in that experiment? Would you perhaps need not only their consent, but perhaps someone else's consent as well? So the majority of you will find this question, is it ethical, written several times in your answer sheet. Now there was this thing that came up quite a lot. Some of you wrote, if participants had been informed beforehand, it would have altered their behavior, so there was no other way. Now that is quite perceptive, to realize that if you indeed tell them, there's an experiment coming up, there's someone on the train who's going to collapse, but you don't have to worry. Obviously that's going to change people's behavior. But they didn't then state, some of you didn't state, whether that was ethical to do. It implies, if you say so that there was no other way, that implies that you think it's okay to do ethics-wise. But if you actually look at some of the ethical guidelines, and there were a few of you who actually picked this up, which is really good. Not telling people beforehand is justified only if important issues are being addressed and if matters of social significance which cannot be uncovered in other ways are likely to be discovered. So what you have to think about here is, two things. First of all, what they've uncovered here, is that actually a matter of social significance? Now, how important is it? Did they really find out something that we didn't know before? And secondly, is there really no other way that you can discover this? Can you think of another way? Some of you have indeed come up with good suggestions for how you might go about it and making this balance between being controlled and perhaps not so ecologically valid, as opposed to something very ecologically valid, but not controlled and not ethical either. So you do need to state here, is it ethical or not, and why? Participants needed to be debriefed because deception had been used. Some of you wrote that. Well, all experiments require a debrief. Not only when you've used deception. And that is because to you the experiment might seem very clear. When you've actually run the experiment, you know what the purpose is. But participants might get the total wrong end of the stick. They might think the experiment is about something completely different. So to address that difference between what they think and what has actually happened, you always need to debrief them. Another thing that came up frequently was they did not tell participants that data would be held confidentially. Well, you have to think about that. What does it mean when you have confidential data? Did they obtain any of that? Confidential data are identifiables. People's name, people's phone number, people's addresses. If you know that information but you keep it to yourself, that's when you keep it confidentially. It's anonymous if you have data from people that doesn't link it back to them. So rather than saying no, they didn't tell people that data would be held confidentially, you need to first look at is it actually a relevant question to ask? Should we not be asking about anonymity instead, and then point that out why that's important. Informed consent, you can actually obtain that retrospectively. You may not know that, and it wasn't the marks taken off if you didn't know that, but marks were given extra if you did point that out, because even if you can't ask beforehand, when you debrief you can still say, do you consent to your data being used in this study, or would you like to withdraw them? A contentious issue, question 8. Some people did mention it, the feelings of guilt, but others did not. That's really one of the main contentious issues that occurs in this study. And it is contentious because you're telling people something about themselves. You're giving them self-insight that perhaps they didn't want to know. They might feel guilty for not helping. That's going to affect their self-esteem. And the thing is that even if you were to debrief them, it still wouldn't remove their feelings of guilt. Even if they found out that, okay, the man who fell, was not actually injured. That still doesn't change the fact that the participants, they didn't help that person. So it doesn't change their self-knowledge, so they might be affected by that for a very long time. So that's the contentious issue referred to there. A bit of a confusing thing in the article was that they talked about the Confederates as being participants. In the opening paragraph, I think they write about that. The participants were dressed either as a priest or as an intern, but they were not participants. They were Confederates, and they should have given them a different label. And lastly, data are plural. They always have been plural, and they always will be plural. I hope you found this useful. You will get your report back, I believe, next week. I've marked them all now. I think all the tutors have marked them now. I've written some feedback on it, but if there's anything that is not clear to you, you would like to talk about in a bit more detail, then please do come and see me. I'm happy to talk about it with you. So I think that's everything. I hope you have a lovely weekend. And I actually hope you've seen the solar eclipse this morning. I hope you haven't missed it. I certainly have, and I still have a sort of yellow dot in the center of my vision because I wasn't smart enough to put on sunglasses. So I'm likely to be affected for a little while longer. So have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you next week.